One of the things you're going to notice when you first make tracks in Mixbus 32C is the main channel strip that you get on every track. Included in this channel strip is the EQ, the busing, and the compression area. And in this video, we're mainly going to concentrate on the EQ. So let's dive in and let's learn what this EQ can do for your mixes. The proportional EQ design was used in the original Harrison consoles to allow the engineer to use the EQ as either a subtle tone shaping tool or a steep filter problem solver with only two knobs. A typical technique is to increase the gain to maximum, sweep the frequency to find an offending sound, and then turn the gain to minimum to notch out the unwanted frequencies. Let's demonstrate some of these concepts on a drum part. So the first thing you want to do is kind of listen to your track and determine what needs to be changed. If it already sounds good, then there's really nothing else to do. But if you want to hear some extra low end, or maybe some extra crispness on the cymbals or a guitar part, then we can easily dive in to the two knobs that we have available for each band and start moving things around till we get a sound that we like. Now this drum part is just a very simple MIDI part that we can hear through the Red Zeppelin drum kit that is included in Mixbus. But let's hear what happens if we boost some low end on this kit. Now we're going to find the frequency that we feel like accentuates the low end. It's typical for drums to narrow out a boxiness kind of sound in the 400 to 500 range. So let's go ahead and find a good frequency to notch out. Let's keep it about right there and let's start bringing down the gain. Now remember, the Q is going to get proportionally narrower whether we boost or we cut. So with the cut all the way down, it's going to be at its narrowest shape. But I feel like that's a little too much. Let's bring it back up. And just with these two EQ moves, let's go ahead and bypass the EQ to hear what the original sounded like, and then listen to it after the fact. Okay, now let's say we want to raise some top end on the snare and maybe the cymbals. We'll bypass the EQ, and then we'll turn it back on. What's great about this way of working is you're not really worried about what your eyes are seeing on a normal stock EQ plug-in that you would see in your typical DAW. But rather, we're forced to use our ears and make minor adjustments with the knobs to get the final sound that we want. Now I know this EQ was applied to a drum kit, but let's say you like that EQ sound and you want to apply it to another track. All we have to do is take our EQ block and drag it over. And now it's going to apply the same EQ to the next track. Now you can see both EQs are identical. If you want to set the EQ back to default, we can just double click. Now let's mess with the high pass and low pass filters to see what those do to your sound. Let's do this on a bass track now. We can bring down the low pass filter, which is going to take away the high end of the bass. If we move it down to a certain point, we can hear that the tick of your fingers hitting the strings are now decreased in the signal. And if we raise it back up, you can hear it come back in. Let's do the same thing with the low end now. If you're working with hip hop or certain types of rock songs, you may want to filter up to 30 Hz to get rid of any low end mud that the speakers just aren't going to reproduce anyway. Okay, now let's move on to a guitar track and see what we can do there. Now, most of the time you want to EQ out of solo mode, which means you want to hear your track in the context of the full mix, so you can really get a glimpse of how your track will sit in the mix with a certain EQ filter. Usually your kick and your bass wants to occupy the low end of the mix. So let's go ahead and take out some low end of the guitar. Once again, we're just going to use our ears on this and determine what sounds best. Let's keep it at 150. That sounds pretty good. Now let's see if there's any mid-range mud that we can take out. Let's just boost the frequency. Let's go hunting around for an area that kind of sounds a little too muddy. Alright, let's try the 400 range. Let's just dip it out just a little bit. Let's bypass the EQ. And then turn it back on. Know that the filters have a generous frequency overlap. It is possible to adjust the frequency knobs on the filters such that there is no signal coming through. This was also possible on the original 32C console and was a favorite tactic of control room pranksters. Let's test this out on the guitar. And now we have nothing. We can bypass the filter and turn it back on. So once again, best practice is just to boost the knob, find a frequency that you feel like could be accentuated or cut, and then make your adjustments from there. The goal of Mixbus 32C is to make mixing simple. It's not to overthink things with adding tons of plugins and other types of processing, because we give you all the tools that you need right here on the channel strip. So if you want to learn more about Mixbus 32C, be sure to subscribe down below and click the bell so you'll be notified the next time we release videos in this series. I'm Nathan from Harrison Consoles, teaching you to mix faster and sound better, and I'll see you in the next video.